Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of the Van Buren Variety Show. I am Bob Van Buren, your host. Glad you're here. We've got a great show, as we always have every week. Just a reminder to the new people that has just now joined. Each week, I interview an individual guest about an interesting topic. It could be about the person's profession, it could be a hobby, it could be a craft, how-to segment, and I even got some musical guests coming up pretty soon, so you want to stay on to that. So if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So I'm very glad you'll be here, and I've got a great guest tonight to talk about a great topic that I know that we'll all enjoy and learn from. Hope you've had a great week so far. My week's getting better. I was a little sick at the end of last week, and I had a sore throat that I just didn't think I could get rid of, and I finally got rid of it. So I can do the show tonight. So I'm actually feeling better. So we'll get through it. Also, I would like to introduce to you, everybody, the newest addition to the Van Buren family. Yes, there is a new entity, I guess you could say, in the Van Buren family. So if she'll cooperate. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Oreo. Oreo was once a feral cat that came by the backyard. I felt sorry for her. And as you can see, I've tamed her. And she is now part of the family. So this is Oreo Van Buren. Does that go together? So normally she's an outside cat, but it's going to get really, really cold pretty soon. So she's going to get really spoiled being in the house. So anyway, this is Oreo, and I'm sure you'll be seeing more of her as we go along. So now let's see if she'll let me do the interview. So get down. All right. Your 5 seconds of fame is gone. She's like, we'll see about that. Anyway, so let's talk about, we're not talking about politics, but, the world situation right now is just so unstable right now. We've got a lot of problems, whether it's political, religious persecution, all kinds of, wars and rumors of wars. But sometimes we need an out. We need to just get away from the real world and the real world problems. So what's one way to do that? Is to really sit down with a good book. Specifically, a book about fantasy, other worlds, other places, to borrow, I hate to be a cliche, but in a galaxy far, far away. So tonight, we've got someone that is an author that writes books like that is sort of an escapism for us all, to get away from all the problems and just forget about all your own problems for a while. So let me bring her on right now.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Tabitha Cole. She is a fantasy writer, which she will tell us more about. Tabitha, welcome to the Van Buren Variety Show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I totally agree with what you said about kind of escaping from the world with a good book. And I can say that as an author, it's kind of the same thing where when I'm writing, it's a bit of an escape for me as well, to just sink into a world I've created and forget about maybe my personal problems or like the problems of the real world and create some problems for other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate that. So for the people that maybe have heard of fantasy writing, how would you define fantasy writing?
I would define fantasy writing as speculative fiction that maybe has to do with things that can't possibly happen within our universe. So like magic, science fiction is also maybe a part of speculative fiction, but it could maybe possibly happen. So I would say fantasy is more about things that can't happen, whether it's magic or like, magical creatures or, I feel like those are pretty fantasy sort of oriented
Sure.
things.
So when did you get interested in writing?
I think it was probably when I was very young. Like I loved creating ideas and worlds, and I was like very much into drawing, so I was always drawing new characters and things. And however, I never really wrote anything until probably high school, and I started writing things, and there are things that like I would look back on right now and be like, oh, not good. But it was good practice, I suppose, for preparing as I got older and had just these interesting ideas in my head that I've always wanted to write down. And a few years ago, I decided, like, you know what? I have to just sit down and write it. Like, I can't just
Sure.
keep thinking about it and creating more details or writing more character sheets. Like, I really just need to sit down and write it, or I'm going to really regret not doing that. And I'm really happy I did.
Would you say were you influenced by any other writers? Or like what other authors do you like to read yourself, other than your own, of course?
Sure. Um, I love all types of fantasy books. I've really liked works by authors like Jeff Wheeler. He's a
Yeah.
fantasy author.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some like fantasy romance, like Nicole Van. I really admire her writing skill. In the like as I was growing up, I loved books like Harry Potter, The Chronicles of Narnia,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
books that just really captured my imagination with this whole new world that I could immerse myself in and kind of journey with the characters and face unique challenges that I never would have thought of on my own, and it kind of inspired new ideas for me. So I think those are the books that I most were into as a child and kind of carried on. It influenced how like what books I like today. It's mostly
Sure.
fantasy or perhaps science fiction.
And I agree with you. And we'll go back to like you just saw Narnia.
Mhm.
Even the movie itself, it's like an escapism. You know,
Yes.
get away from the problems. I mean, we have so many problems with inflation and wars and politics. It's just kind
Yeah.
of nice to get away for a little while, you know.
Yes.
So now you've written some books, but now are you published or do you self-publish?
I'm self-published, so I've put all my books up on Amazon by myself. I don't have like a publisher representing me, which provides some unique benefits, such as I have total control over
Yep.
everything I do, but it also has some challenges where I'm in control of everything I do and I am responsible for everything, including marketing and all that stuff. So
A lot of
it
work.
has a lot of work. It's been a big learning curve, I feel like, but I'm really proud of how far I've come in this journey for the past couple of years.
How difficult is it to self-publish? I mean, you mentioned all these things you got to do, like the marketing.
Mhm.
Does it take a while to self-publish, or I mean, what all goes into that?
So you write your book, obviously, and you have that ready, and you don't have like there are plenty of authors who choose not to get like a formal editor and before publishing their book. And it could have some unfortunate consequences where you publish something that has lots of typos or something.
Yeah.
But if you get your work polished and you have a book cover that you're happy with, it's very easy actually. And Amazon
Really?
provides a lot of like tips and guidelines for how to format your book or how like what you need in order to publish. So once you have that already, it's very easy to just upload it, click some buttons, set the price that you want to set, and then it's out there, it's ready to go. And then everything else is up to you of like I said, like promoting it. Um, of course, like you open it up a few days later, like a few weeks later, and then you're like the first page you open, like crap, there's a typo. So it's
Hmm.
nice that you can like go back and re-upload an edited version in case you catch something or someone else does. So overall, I'd say the process is very easy.
Cool.
Anybody could do it. Um, if you want to do it well, it probably it takes some more effort, like
Sure.
getting yourself a proofreader or proofreading yourself very, very
Hmm.
thoroughly. Hiring like an artist to create a nice book cover that's going to catch eyes. You could create your own book cover. I feel like the tools don't lend themselves to making something that's going to catch as many eyes as maybe a professional doing it, but
Hmm.
it plenty of people do it if that's what they can afford, and they have success as well. So yeah, lots of tools out there to help you do it to make it easier, and I'd say overall it's a very easy process. The actual act of publishing and then promoting is a different ball game.
I'd like to go ahead and show my audience some of the books that you've written.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, these look very interesting. So let me display this. You can kind of tell us, don't tell us the details,
Okay.
make people, let's reel people in here, intrigue
Sure.
them. So you have a collection of books here that we're going to show to
Mhm.
our audience. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is something you're probably going to be interested in. So, Tabitha, kind of tell us about these series of books that you've written.
Yeah, these are the three books I have out right now. They're all part of one series called the Warriors of Brea.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be 5 books total in the series. I'm working on the 4th book right now. But these are the 3 that are out. And the series is about a young woman named Lauren Strauss, who, is living a relatively normal life. There's some weird things about her, but she gets in this situation where she is transported to another world.
Oh,
And
that sounds
she has to
interesting.
figure out what the heck is going on. She has to, kind of learn to survive and navigate in this new world, and also learn some interesting things about herself and her past that she may not have realized before. So
Oh,
it
wow.
all kind of details the story of this young woman, and there are more characters that come in as the story goes on. But it's really about her and her. She's a central protagonist.
Now, make sure I'm saying that name right. Is it Bria, the Warriors of Bria? Is that how you're saying that?
Brea.
Brea. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of, what is Brea? Is that a person, a
Brea
place?
is a country.
It's a
It's the
country.
land
Okay.
that she is transported to, and the land where there are these warriors, like the title indicates, that have like some interesting powers. So, and Lauren's journey includes learning about some powers of her own.
I noticed there's 3 books, like a trilogy, but will there be more books, or is this the trilogy that you're going to have?
There will be more. There'll be 2 more, so ending with 5 total.
Okay. And that's just now we'll mention this again at the end of the show. But if say somebody wants to buy this book, do you have a website or what other places can they go to buy these books from you?
Absolutely. So they're available on Amazon if you look up the Warriors of Brea. You can
Okay.
also go to my website, tmcole.com,
Okay.
and they're right there on the front page. You can click the link to follow, to go to Amazon and buy them.
Okay. So yeah, we'll definitely check that out. So when you do the fantasy writing, do you just do you base it on something maybe you've experienced, or is it something that you
Mhm.
imagine, or kind of how do you create? I guess how do you create this world? I guess I'm asking.
Sure. So I believe it's kind of a mix. There are plenty of things that I've based certain things on, especially as I maybe read other books or watch shows
Mm-hmm.
or movies or play video games. And then just things I see. Like I think one of my favorite things to do is go hiking. So I go hiking,
Oh
and some
wow.
places I've been are incredible sights and vistas, and like particularly like in mountains. So those have really inspired me in some of the landscapes that appear in the books.
I see.
Otherwise, I do think a lot of things just come from within myself as well. For instance, a lot of my characters I feel are reflections of part of me,
Mm-hmm.
where they might kind of represent this certain principle or value or trait that I have, and kind of embodies it in a certain way with
I see.
throughout the story.
I'm going to ask you, when you write your books, do you write in like in the first person, or do you write in third person? How do you normally write?
Normally a third person. There is a story that is like kind of just a work in progress right now. I don't know if I'll publish it very soon, but it is
Mm-hmm.
in first person, which has been kind of fun to explore because I don't haven't done that very often, but mostly in third person.
Okay. We have a question from the audience, so let me
Okay, great.
bring this up here. Tabitha, Jean is asking, so are these books for young adults or adults? Who's your
I think
audience?
I would say mostly like adults. I think an older teenager could read it. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily advise like a younger teenager reading it. It does have some violence and some curse words.
PG
So
13, I guess you could.
PG-13, yes, that's what I would say would be. So I'd be like, I would let my 16-year-old read it if I had a 16-year-old, probably not my 12-year-old. Um,
Okay.
but I would say it's more of like a new adult, like college age maybe as like the target, but anybody I'd say like late teenage and on could read it, enjoy it.
Okay. Mature enough to handle it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk to my audience. When I talked about first person and third person, first person means you're writing it and you are that character. You're
Mhm.
writing with that person's feelings and emotions and thoughts. But third person, you're writing about that person. Is that a correct statement, Tabitha?
Yeah, so like an easy way to differentiate the between the two is first person is like you're seeing somebody speaking directly, like I went to the store, I went and battled this great evil and won, blah blah blah. So using
Mm-hmm.
I or we, first person language. And
Sure.
then third person would be like he, she, they, it. um, narrating whatever they did. And sometimes with the third person, you can have it be like third person in the perspective of who you're talking about. So like like the audience will only know what the like character knows, which is like third
Sure.
person limited. And then there's also third person omniscient, where the narrator knows everything. The reader might be clued into things that the character doesn't know, but it's said in the narration what's happening that the character isn't clued in on yet,
I
if that
see.
makes sense.
I want to say your book. Like I said, we're not giving details away, but is there? How can I say? It's almost like, is there a good versus evil in a way, or is it more she's in fantasy world and learning how to do her powers? I mean,
Hmm.
how would you describe that?
There is an evil force that does come into play, and it will require throughout the entire series, you know, uh, the characters learning
Sure.
about this and like gathering forces, and there will be an epic battle at the end with bumps and obstacles along the way.
Wow.
So I would say overall at its very core it is a good versus evil sort of story.
Well, let me ask you then. When you started writing, or I'll just take this book for example, this first one.
Mhm.
How long did it take you to write? Like from the time you started, writing till you said, "Hey, I'm finished." How about it?
Mhm.
What's the time period? How long does it take normally to write like a book like this?
For my first book, it took about a year.
A year.
I'm not
Okay.
the fastest writer, unfortunately.
I mean, nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being slow. Take your time.
Right, take your time, yeah. And part of it was because I was like figuring out exactly what I was doing, first of all. And then also, like, I was working full time at that point, so I didn't
Sure.
have as much time to devote to or energy to devote to writing everything faster. So it did take a year to get everything written down.
Oh, did it? Oh,
And
wow.
and then the second and third book also took roughly a year to write. However, the fourth book that I'm working on currently, I started in October, and I'm
Hmm.
already like two-thirds way through. So it's like the fastest I've ever
Wow.
written. It's been going great. I'm like, wow, if I can keep this up the rest of my life, that'd be awesome.
That,
Um,
hey, that'd be great.
yeah, so I think about a year has how been my
Okay.
average so far.
And we actually have another question from our live audience who's watching this, so I'll bring
Great.
this up. Gary's asking, when you say self-published, do you mean you print the books or just pay to have them printed? Good question.
Yeah, great question. So with Amazon, they do the printing for you, and they get a cut from whatever profits you might make selling the books through their platform. They also sell ebooks, like you can download onto your Kindle or like an
Hmm.
iPad or phone or something, which is where most of my sales come from. But my books do have paperback and hardback versions, so Amazon prints those on demand, which is kind of nice.
Okay.
And like I said, they take a cut, and they send it to they do everything for you. They just got to take their cut, of course.
You just kind of wash your hands in a way, then,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Now, prior to us coming live, you mentioned something you were going to be doing some audiobooks. Is it audiobooks of the books that you've written already, like
Yeah, so right now I'm
narration?
working on producing audiobooks of my series so far. I've finished recording the first book, and now I'm working on editing it. And then I've just started recording for the second book. And I'm hoping to have the first audiobook. It'll definitely, my deadline that I gave myself is July. I think it'll be done well before that, maybe in like late March or April.
So you're narrating these yourself. You haven't
I
hired
am.
someone. You're going to read them.
Yes.
That's probably the best way because you know your own work. Someone else may not read it the way that you wrote it. So
Sure.
that's probably a good thing. How do you go about doing an audiobook? I mean, how do you just what kind of recording device do you have, and then how do you put that onto like a place where people can download it and listen to it?
Right. So, I got myself a mic that has been, like well rated and recommended to me a couple times by different people. So I say a good mic is definitely, like a really big part of it,
Sure.
finding the right mic for you, and one that's not like crazy expensive. I think the one I got was a Rode, and it was like close to $200, so like pretty good
That's
for.
not bad. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty good for a mic, and it's like had very excellent quality for me so far. I have no complaints. Um, and so I have like a studio set up in my basement where
Oh,
it's
hey,
very
that's the best
low
time to have a
tech.
studio, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like very low tech. I have like a blanket surrounding me and then like random styrofoam and some other like very soft things to help absorb sound so that there's no
Oh,
echoing or
I like
anything like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have like a spare monitor down there so that I can look at like I have to bring my computer down there and plug it in and then so I can look at what I'm recording. I have the mic directly plugged into the computer.
That's
So
probably the best thing to do, is because,
yes,
and I'm sorry, I apologize.
no worries.
Because sometimes, I'm in my studio, but then the proverbial police car or siren or
Sure.
car honking will be back there to
Yes.
interrupt. So, yeah,
Right.
so it's a good thing you've got kind of soundproof down there.
Yes. And then and like sometimes yeah, like things do like if a car drives by and it's really loud or my neighbor decides they have to mow the lawn right at that minute, the sound might come through on the mic, so I would have to like maybe stop recording for however long
Mm-hmm.
that lasts. Um but yeah, so I record what I want to record and then I work with a program called Audacity that's free and like cut out all the outtakes, which there are a lot. I write down any lines I need to re-record, which are also a lot. Um, and um, and then like you know, make sure that there's a sufficient time gap between sentences, like maybe like a second or so, and making that all uniform, and then applying different settings to make the sound nice, like an equalizer and
Mm-hmm.
normalizing the sound and
Well, I was going to ask you that
yeah.
next question. Now you're narrating it, but are you adding
Mhm.
like music and other like sound effects with it too, or are you just doing a straight read, or how are you doing that?
Most of it will be a straight read. There is music at the beginning and end that I've put in, and then there are a couple situations where I might apply some effects for voice, like if somebody is speaking to another person's mind, like telepathically, there's a certain voice effects, like kind of like you probably heard it before, like it's sort of like an echoey, metallic sort of sound.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like kind of the classic voice effect for that I want
I
to add
see.
in for that situation. Yeah,
Interesting. Do you see? Now you haven't published that yet. You haven't had your audiobook, right?
not
Yeah,
yet.
it's on its way. Okay.
Yes.
So there might be somebody listening right now, and maybe they've got some ideas. Now I'm talking about myself here too. Maybe they got some ideas for stuff, and they're like,
Hmm.
I don't know if that would make it, or should I write? So if there's
Sure.
somebody like out there that's not published, knows nothing about the business, but
Hmm.
maybe they have something that they want to write down, you
Hmm.
know, what would you suggest to that person? How to start out? What would you tell that person?
Sure. I think there's several different ways I think you could start out depending on what your needs are or what you prefer for your experience. So if you have an idea, but you maybe need some help with like kind of developing this idea or refining it so that you're ready to write it down, there's lots of different communities out there that all are like about writing or provide support with writing. Like there's a community on Amazon um, with their Kindle Direct Publishing program. Like there's like forums and stuff that if you wanted to talk with them and be like, hey, I have this idea and I'm wondering if anybody could help me like develop it further. There's an author community on social media like Twitter or Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Discord if you use that sort of platform. And I mean YouTube as well. Like like there's booktube sort of channels where they talk about books. So, they probably could, point you in the right direction of talk like, people to bounce ideas off perhaps. So if you're at that sort of path, that might be a good idea for you to head down. There's also just, honestly, write down your idea, even if it's really rough.
Yeah.
Just write
Mm-hmm.
something down. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think that gets in a lot of the way of a lot of people where they're like if I'm writing it, it's not perfect. That means it's total trash. So why bother?
Okay, it's called
Um,
crib notes, like crib notes.
exactly. So, like, yeah, those perfectionists out there, with myself included, you have to kind of like get rid of that mindset and just write something down. And that point, if you've written something down and it's scary. It's really scary to like start asking for feedback because you never know what kind of feedback you're going to get. Someone might love it, someone might hate it, someone might like not answer you after a while. They might like ghost you.
Hmm.
But it was that was kind of the route I took. I wrote something down and then I started going to like goodreads.com. They have
Sure.
some forums for um people who give like beta feedback on stories. And I got some really good feedback. Like I was getting good feedback. It helped me gain some confidence, like, oh wow, okay, so there's things I need to work on, but
Sure.
people seem to like this story, so I'm going to continue. And I feel like that's another route you could take. You could either like for no matter what, I feel like finding some kind of community to help with like whether it's developing ideas or providing feedback on an idea you have is really
Hmm.
it's been really helpful for me.
Well, let me ask you: did you just naturally start writing, or did you take any kind of courses in high school or college about writing? How did you develop your expertise?
Yeah, so I have not taken any formal courses. I've done some things like writing exercises when I was younger. Like as I started getting more interested in writing, I would try to find resources out there
Hmm.
where like how to hone the craft or whatever.
Sure.
So kind of started practicing writing, and then um however, I don't think like I never did anything big like a project, like actual writing a full length novel
Oh,
until
sure.
I actually
Hmm.
wrote it. And in that process, I think that in itself was a big learning process and helped me kind of find like weak points, strong points, and especially with the feedback I was getting from beta readers, um, kind of helped hone more. And I feel like as I've continued this series, my writing skill has like improved a lot. I feel like I started out, I think I wrote a good book with the first one, but I feel like it just keeps
Hmm.
getting better as I've practiced writing more.
That's
Practice makes
great.
perfect sort of situation.
Well, got a comment, not a question, but a comment
Yeah.
from the audience, and I'll see if you've ever done this, Tabitha.
Okay.
Gene says storyboards work to write down your outline. Have you ever done a storyboard? I know people have,
Yes.
but have you done it?
Yeah, so I wouldn't have like I didn't have a storyboard with like pictures or anything, but yes, I have written down outlines, and that is definitely a good way to kind of organize your thoughts and start hashing out details of like your plot or maybe how characters interact. I'm not the most detailed outliner. Like I tend to just kind of write like the
Mm-hmm.
basic premise for maybe like a chapter or a certain beat I want to hit. And then when I actually start writing, sometimes my end product ends up way different than the outline I started with.
Sure.
It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
funny to revisit outlines I've written in the past and being like, this is totally different than what it ended up being, which is it's funny and it's also interesting to look at.
The story that I wrote many, many, many years ago is, I don't know how you do it, but what I would do is like, okay, I think of a good story. I think, okay, I want my characters to start here. I
Hmm.
want them to end up here, and then I
Hmm.
just kind of filled in the middle. But like you just
Mm.
said, there was a story that I wrote where well, I've written so much, there's no way they could end up there. So it kind of
Sure.
changed the ending as I go. So
Oh, yeah,
do
yeah.
you do that? Do you create the beginning and end and fill in the middle, or how do you do that?
I tend to more have excuse me, an end goal or like an end point in mind that
Mm-hmm.
I'm working toward as I write. And I tend to write like in a linear progression, like
Mm-hmm.
I'll write the beginning and then continue writing each event as it happens until I get to the end. I know there's plenty of people who don't write in order though, and then sometimes like when they find it that's their best way to write or how they prefer, and it works out really well. I tend to write more linear.
See.
Mhm.
So when you write, do you just when you start writing your book, when you think about it, do you get on your computer and type, or do you just write, handwriting, or how do you do
Mm.
your notes when you start off?
I do have a notebook that I write like physically, but it's mostly just for like ideas or like if I'm like washing the dishes and I have like this idea, I go and run and put it in my notebook. Um, but most of my writing I do on my computer, like when I'm writing the actual story.
Hmm. Now you said that you're self-published, but I know I'd
Mhm.
heard there are some publishing companies out there
Mhm.
that if you publish through them,
Mhm.
they actually have strict guidelines. And what I mean by that is they want it in a certain font. They want it a
Mhm.
certain double space. They want so much on one page. Now
Mhm.
that's if you're published, but now if you are self-published, do you still have any kind of guidelines to go by? Can you put any kind of font you want, or is there any kind of rhyme or reason in that
Sure.
case?
So I believe from what I understand, you have a little more leeway perhaps with how you might format something. If you have an artist who's really good at creating like the opening chapter flourishes and you can
Mm-hmm.
put in those images. So I do think there is more freedom. I do tend to see like there is still kind of like like an industry standard, I'd say. Like
Mm-hmm.
most people will type within a certain collection of fonts, like whether it's Arial or Times New Roman or something like that. Um,
I'm a
so I don't
Times New
see,
Roman guy.
yes, same here, me too. So I haven't seen a lot of variation in self-published books with like too much. There's maybe some variation, but nothing. I've still seen people aggregate. They tend to aggregate toward a certain sort of look or industry standard.
Have
I
you
think
had
they
to?
want to look like the published books too.
Sure, right, absolutely. Have you had to edit your stories? Like, for example, the story that I wrote, actually, it was a play, not a story, but
Mm,
when I finished typing it, it was long. I'm like, there's no way a stage play could last that long, so I
sure.
had to cut my own work. So, have you ever had
Yes.
to do that where you had too much detail, you had to cut a few scenes, or no? Were you pretty much always on the money?
I do. Yeah, there's certainly scenes that I would need to cut, or like maybe they didn't play into the story. If I got feedback in there and readers were kind of like, "Why is this happening?" or like, "I got bored here," or something like
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to maybe rewrite, or maybe someone present a problem like plot wise, like, "Why is this happening when this happens later?" or something like that. So I have to like maybe rethink some things and go back and rewrite. And yeah, I have had to cut scenes before. As I've that was oh, I did a lot in the first book. I had to kind of really rework some things as I went on. Like this past book, it seemed like when I finished it there wasn't a whole lot. Like there were some things I needed to still edit besides
Sure.
just like proofreading everything. Like there were things I wanted to add in or take out or like just little details here and there. Um, but yeah, there's definitely been times when I've had to rework or like rewrite entire chapters or something like that.
That's hard. I can relate.
Yeah,
It's not like, oh, but I like this, but
I
either
know.
it made the story too long, or it was maybe
Yep,
irrelevant, But
yep,
yeah, you got to keep the reader's interest.
that's right. And yeah, it's really hard to cut some of those scenes that are really like you're like I put work into this. I really liked this scene. I've had it in my head for like years or something like that. But then people like it just doesn't add to the story, or maybe it drags on too long or something. So yeah, sometimes just gotta do what it takes and just chop it
Yeah,
out.
right. As
Rip
painful
off
as
the
it is.
band-aid. As painful as it is.
Got another question from the live audience. I'll bring
Okay.
that up. This is from Gary again. He's asking you: is there a length restriction, or can the book be any length?
To my knowledge, there's no real limit to a book length. Um, uh, I haven't ever read a book that was more than like 200,000 words. Like that's a pretty long book.
War and Peace,
And
maybe.
I was gonna say like there are some books out there that are like really long and they kind of stand out as far as length goes.
um,
I don't think I've never seen anything saying that there's a limit to how long a book can be. Um, and I think yeah, like most books tend to go between anywhere between like 70,000 and 200,000 words has been kind of where almost all books I've
kind of
kind of
average.
fall into that range. Yeah.
I see. Um, Now you're self-published, but of course, you don't want anybody quote stealing your work.
Sure.
So, what is the process for getting your work copyrighted? In other words, it belongs to you. No one else can take your ideas or take
Right.
your work even and claim it as their own. So, what's
Right.
what's the copyright stages?
So there is a copyright in the United States at least, there's a copyright office that you
Okay.
can put like I don't know the right word for it, but like register your work with, I suppose is the right
Okay.
word. And it you pay like a some kind of fee, and at that point they'll like put it in their records that you own the copyrights in this like title or series
The
or whatever.
characters or whoever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, pretty much all self-published authors I've read have put a copyright page in their books.
Mm-hmm.
And piracy can definitely be a problem. I think I've seen my books on websites that were like they're like a pirated version or something. In which case, if you see that, you would have to do a I think it's a DMCA. I don't know if I have the order of the letters right. I think DMCA, where you like
Oh,
basically
sure.
make a copyright claim.
Okay.
It stands for some law, I believe, that has to do with copyright. And so you have to make some kind of claim being like, hey, they stole my work and you need to take it down. And I haven't actually followed through with that with some things because it's like it'd be like some like random website that like I don't care if it's on there right now because it's not like on a big website that like everyone's going to be taking the work or whatever. So I haven't actually I haven't actually made a copyright claim or DMCA'd a website for having my book copy on there. But that's from what I understand, that would be what you do.
I see. I heard it now. This may not be the case, but many years ago, when I had written my show or work, I didn't know how to copyright it. But someone said, "No, maybe you can clarify. Maybe if you know or don't know." But they said that if you send your work through the mail, but send it to yourself certified, somehow that quote unquote certifies it. But I'm thinking,
Okay.
I don't know how that would work. Just because you're sending your work to yourself certified,
Sure.
how does that
Yeah,
copyright? I don't know if
I
you've ever
haven't
heard of
heard
that or
anything
not.
like that. I haven't heard anything like that. I guess just from my perfunctory research that I did before I published, I like the information I found all had to do with like the Copyright Office in Washington, D.C.
In fact, Gary's following up with that question, what we just talked
Okay.
about. Writing fantasy, do you have any concerns about plagiarism? Someone stealing your work.
Right. So far, I have not had any experience like that, thankfully. Um, I I get like it's kind of hard to say like what I would do necessarily if I saw someone like stealing my work or like claiming my work as their own.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, I probably would have to like maybe hire a lawyer and figure out like,
Yeah,
what do I do from here? Like, how can I get them to stop in a
exactly.
legal sense? And I probably would save it all interaction with purely the lawyer just so I wouldn't somehow get myself in trouble by trying to contact that person directly necessarily.
Okay, he's clarifying this.
Oh, sure.
He's clarifying his question. Not someone copying you.
Okay.
He's I guess what I'm getting is like, okay, what if you've written something and unintentionally it looks like
Oh, I
somebody
see.
else's work. I mean,
Right, right, right,
how do we
right,
clarify that? That'd be kind of a gray area where you didn't do it intentionally.
right.
So
Which I
kind of
believe does happen in some cases. And I'm not quite sure. Like, I guess if someone came up to me and told me, "Hey, you copied my book," and they give me like a book that eerily resembles what I've written,
hmm
um, I guess, the only recourse I could think of is just trying to figure it out, maybe like, figuring out what they want. Like, do they want me to delete it? Do they want me to just change some things
yeah.
or whatever?
You could prove
So
that's
maybe it's like,
unintentional. It's
right,
like
exactly. Like, I'd be like, look, I promise I didn't like do anything. There may have to be some kind of legal, like maybe a civil court could help with the process if
yeah.
that became a problem. But I would hope that just engaging with that person and trying to figure it out in a way that doesn't require lawyers would
Right.
be ideal. Yeah,
There goes a lot of your money right there.
exactly. Like, can't if you don't have to bring the lawyers, then hopefully then don't.
Right. Let me go back to your books here.
Okay.
Now, are these hardcovers or are they paperback or both?
They are available in both. This picture kind of shows more like a paperback. This is like a digital
Oh, is
image.
it? Okay. All right.
But they are available in both paperback and hardback and ebook
Okay.
and soon to be audiobook.
Soon to be audiobook. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a good fantasy, this is the probably the series you want to read. And you did say, Tabitha, that there's two more coming.
There are two
Correct?
more coming. Yep.
Oh, wow. You know what? Maybe I need to leave these up a little bit longer. 'Cause maybe a Hollywood writer, a Hollywood producer,
Oh
maybe want to
man,
make it into
that'd
a
be
movie.
amazing. That would be amazing. If I can
Hey,
get a movie rights, that'd be amazing. Or like have a movie made, like my dream come true.
just remember, you were here on Van Buren Variety
Exactly.
first.
I'll be like for the Oscar speech or whatever. Like I'd like to thank the Van Buren Show.
Let me ask you this then on the fantasy.
Mhm.
Um, Most of it, I mean, the books that we're talking about just now doesn't take place on Earth. It's somewhere else in this
Yeah,
country you're talking about. Does this place, again, I'm not trying to get any details of your book, but does it
sure.
resemble Earth at all, or is it a completely different place with different creatures and different
Mhm.
beliefs? And well, how would you describe this world that you've created?
Sure. I would call this world like sort of like an alternate Earth. Like there's lots of similarities.
Okay,
Like the main character Lauren doesn't stand out like totally as like utterly alien to this world. Like she definitely stands out because she like doesn't know any of the customs or anything. But it's a world made up of humans. They have human tendencies, and there's more things at work. Like as you read the books, like there's kind of bigger things going on at play that I don't want to delve too much into. If
yeah,
in case
sure,
you choose to read it and
yeah.
find out for yourself.
We're trying to
Um,
intrigue people.
Exactly, yeah. So it is like a very similar world to Earth, but there's some pretty big differences. The biggest one being that in this other world, there seem to be people who have powers that like humans on Earth don't seem to have. And they're kind of like ability to like manipulate the elements like earth and water and
Oh
fire
wow.
and some other more maybe unusual ones. And yeah, so they're yeah, like mostly human like or mostly like Earth like world, but like very different cultures, different geography, obviously,
Sure.
um, and some other interesting things like this world has two moons. Um,
Oh wow.
it's like different from our world, and then also the planet rotates the other way, so the sun rises in the west and sets in the east.
Boy, that does sound intriguing.
Yeah,
Wow.
and to be honest, it doesn't play like a huge part in the book, but it's just like a detail I added in, and you might notice as you're reading.
Okay. Each one of your books, what's the average page number? How many pages are in the books about?
Um,
Usually.
for the paper book, it's about like between 400 and 400, or excuse me, 450 and 490 pages, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They all tend to run like between 120 and 135,000 words.
Oh
So
wow.
like kind of I guess I can grab a copy real quick and show you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We'd love to see it. Let me show the books again that you've got here, ladies and gentlemen. You definitely want to check these books out. Again, we will advertise this again. Her website, and you can also get this on Amazon. So again, I will post her website on the chat blog too. So, and it is tmcole.com. Is what you said it
Yep,
was. Okay.
tmcole.com.
And
So yeah,
write that
here's
down.
first book. You can see like pretty good chunk of book there, and it's I believe 487 pages. And all
That's
the
not
other
bad.
books, I don't think they're quite as long, but they're not that much shorter. They're all about roughly the
Well,
same
that's
length.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Now, let me ask you this: so, if they go to your website, which I posted here,
Mhm.
uh, and then because you also get it on Amazon, but would you get, like I said, now Amazon probably charges you a little bit of fees. I guess I'm asking, would you get more financial reward by them going to your website or going to Amazon, or does it matter?
It won't matter for this case because the
Okay,
links on my website go to Amazon.
they do. Okay.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you click below, or just not click here, but type in tmcole.com if you want more information for her books. I am looking forward to the next book. And what's the next book going to be called in this series? Let me bring the books. So, can you kind of give us the names again of each
Sure.
one?
So the first one is The Warriors of Brea, The Lost King. And the second book is some of the title gets blocked off,
Yeah.
but
Uh
it's
huh.
The Master of Night. And then the third book is The God of Forgotten Things.
Oh
And the
wow.
fourth book that I'm working on, the working title right now is The Hidden Goddess.
The
Um,
Hidden Goddess.
yeah,
Hmm.
so it may change. I don't think it will, but that's the working title right now for that.
Did you draw the artwork, or did you have someone draw the artwork for you, or where did that come from?
I wish I drew the artwork. I wish I had that skill.
I don't, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, right, me neither. So I did hire people to draw the covers. Each book has a different artist drawing for it. The third book is a personal friend of mine who's an artist, and he did an amazing job, and he's going to be drawing the fourth book and maybe even the fifth book as well, if he's up for it.
Did you tell them kind of what you wanted on the cover? Just kind of describe, or did they kind of use their imagination? Kind of how would you say they did that?
Right. So I did tell them like my general vision. Like I would tell, like maybe for example, the first book, I told them I want a young woman, with like I gave her, the description of her appearance, and I want her to be holding this amulet. And I want it to kind of be like a dreamlike sort of like lots of blues or purples, like, and you can
Yeah.
see there's a lot of purple in it. So the artist kind of took that and for each of the books, each of the covers so far too, like they took the general directions I gave and then gave me their initial ideas or maybe like a sketch, and I would, provide some feedback of what I really liked, and maybe if there's anything that I wanted to change, I would ask for that. But yeah, I would just give them my general sort of thing, and they took it however their imagination went, and
Yeah.
I'm really,
Wow.
really happy with how they took it all.
It looks very good. I mean, they
Thank
did a
you.
very good job. And again, I'm with you on that. I can't hardly draw a stick figure, so I envy people and I admire people who can draw because
Yeah.
if you're waiting for me to draw that, you'd be waiting a long time. You get those little scribbly looking lines. If for me, if
Sure.
I,
Yep.
that's awesome. Now, when you finish this series, you said there's going to be 5 books in all.
Uh-huh.
Are you having ideas on any future books that are separate from this series?
Yeah, so I have like a Google Doc that has a list of just like random ideas, and
Oh,
some are
wow.
more developed than others. Some of them I maybe have even written a chunk. Like if I got moved by the spirit for like a day, I might
Sure.
like ch- plank out a chapter or two. And so I do have lots of ideas for future books, some of which, like most of which are still in the fantasy realm. I do have some maybe like sci-fi ideas. Um, excuse me. And I think some very like these are very hazy ideas. Like maybe I'll get to them, maybe I won't, but like maybe some that totally go outside the realm of either science fiction or fantasy. But definitely some more clear-cut ideas that I'd like to get to after I finish this series.
Wow. So, I always heard that if you like what you do, it's not really a job, but it sounds like you're
Right.
you're enjoying what you're doing.
I am. I really am. I'm so glad I have this opportunity to be writing, like writing down the thoughts and ideas in my head. Because if I don't write them down, then I think my head will explode with all the ideas.
But hey, nothing wrong with having too many ideas.
True.
I've written a lot of things down that I thought, actually I've kind of combined ideas. Maybe I'd have a story here and a story here. I'm like, well,
Sure.
I could combine those characters. Have you ever
True.
found that where you had a character and they're kind of sharing the same space or same realm, I guess you could say?
I don't think I have. Um, but that's a really interesting thing that could occur. And now maybe I'll start thinking about like, well, what if if there's like maybe a character that I never ended up utilizing in like this series, like maybe there'd be a way they could fit in a future thing, um, and how however that works. So that's very intriguing that you say that because I'm going to start thinking about that now.
Yeah. I apologize for our uninvited guest here. So, trying to get her 50 seconds of fame in.
At
So,
least she's cute and fluffy.
now, off the subject, now, do you have pets too? I've got
I
one
do.
cat
I have a
now.
cat. I also have a cat, and he's black and white like your kitty.
Oh, really?
But he's like more of the like tuxedo coloring,
Oh,
mostly
yeah,
black with
sure.
like a white tummy and stuff.
Is
And
he
his name
inside
is
or outside?
he's an indoor cat. He likes to go outside, and then he like immediately starts eating grass or something, so we bring him back in.
But see, I noticed that
Um,
he's letting you do the interview. I don't see him, so
he
you
is
must have
letting
him
me.
locked.
He likes to just chill out over there, and like he likes to be in the same room, but like watching you instead of getting up on
Uh,
you.
I know my cat. If I'm sitting down, I need to be petting. So live broadcasts mean nothing to her.
Socially needy kitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, Tabitha, I'm looking forward to seeing more of your work. And let me put your website address again up there. And ladies and gentlemen, if you like fantasy, and I'll go back to what I said in the beginning of this interview, we got to get away from the real world. When you turn on the news and all you hear is about politics or war or the economy and
Hmm.
inflation and just the problems of the world, just this is a good way to get away from that. Just sit down with a good book. We all have problems, but let's just take time out from your problems for a while. Read you a good, real fantasy book, and this would be the series to do that. And there you see the author's website right there, tmcole.com. You can get there and look at all of her work. And stay tuned. You might want to bookmark that because you'll see some of her future work as well.
That's
So
right.
we're looking forward to seeing more from Miss Cole. That's kind of all I had tonight. Tabitha, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Um, if you want to check out my website, it has links to where you can find my books on Amazon. There's also some other content there too, where like I have a blog post series about how to create your own language, kind of like
Oh,
J.R.R.
really?
Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Yeah, I like
yeah,
that.
so there are some made up languages in my books, which don't worry, you don't need a dictionary or anything like that to figure out what they mean. I just kind of sprinkle it in to add some flourish to the story. But if that's something that interests you, you can check that out. I also have art on there.
Oh,
And I do
really?
some of my own
Interesting.
book reviews, which I haven't done as many as I would like. I'd like to do more book reviews, but there are some of those if you'd like to check that all out.
Sure. I would like to ask you another question. You said that now you self-published, so
Uh-huh.
you did your own editing. But let's just say maybe somebody has self-published, but maybe they want someone to look over their work, a professional.
Sure.
Is
Mhm.
there where would you suggest they go if they want to hire a professional editor to look over their work? Where would that
Right.
person go?
Um, so where I would probably recommend, um, or like a place that has lots of different people available, and they might be able to cater more to your needs, like based on whatever particular thing you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com, is a great
Fiverr.com.
place to
Okay.
hire people like anybody can put whatever gig they want on there. So definitely do your research and try and make sure you're kind of using some discretion when you are selecting somebody. Like if they have a lot of reviews and everything like that, they're probably, um, they probably are legit. But if they only have like one review, then definitely be careful, um, or no reviews. And
Sure. Be
yeah,
careful.
so to definitely be careful. So that would be probably where I'd start looking. You can also just like Google like different editing services. They can be expensive. That's the thing. So if you have maybe like if you go into one of the communities I mentioned earlier, like maybe on Goodreads or
Mm-hmm.
Facebook or Twitter or kdp.amazon.com, the Kindle publishing community, they probably also could give you recommendations on people they hired that weren't a bad price, or like if they themselves offering editing services. I'm really
Sure.
lucky in that my mom has a lot of like has done some editing experience, and then also some other family members
Well, that
who
helps.
like are
That
English
helps.
teachers or something. Yeah, so they
Sure.
helped me with the proofreading. So yeah, like I guess that'd be probably where I started. If you don't know anybody who's an editor or has any connections of that kind, Fiverr is a really good place to look, in my opinion.
Fiverr, that's Fiverr.com.
Fiverr, two R's.
Oh, to Fiverr.com.
Yes.
Okay. But now, like you just said, with an editor, if you get a professional, you're probably going to be shelling out some dough because
They can
they're
be
there to make money.
expensive.
Yeah.
Yes. Especially if you have like a long book, this price racks up real quick. So there are maybe like cheaper options. You just have to be, again, really careful with whom you might
Mm-hmm.
hire. And then also, it always pays to double check your own stuff. Like
Sure.
there's some things you can
Mm-hmm.
do, like read your book out loud. That catches a lot of things. If you
Yeah.
have like a text-to-speech software that's also helpful. Like if you don't want to read the book all
Oh, I
yourself
didn't
out
think
loud.
about that. That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
text-to-speech, and that'll help catch. Like when you hear it out loud, there's something different happens in your brain where you just tend to be
Yeah.
able to catch things better. Um, and then like there's different methods for like copy editing or line editing where you look at one line at a time very slowly and go through. So there are ways you can do it on your own, but if you want to have some extra insurance or guarantee that you are delivering the best, most polished product you can, then Fiverr's a great place to look, or just like Googling for different like editing or copy editing services.
Does the editor now, well, let's say a professional editor,
Mhm.
are they only looking for like spelling mistakes, etc., or are they really looking at the content? Like, you know what, this might not be a good story, or this may not
Sure.
be something you want to add there. Are they only looking for like punctuation and vocabulary? Are they also looking at content? In your opinion?
You could do either way. So there are editors who look at kind of the big picture. They look at the story, and then um and as well as like the grammar and proofreading and
Hmm.
just how sentences flow, like whether if you have a clunky sentence and they will point it out, as well as like ideas that maybe need refining or change. And then there are editors who only look at proofreading and won't consider the actual story content. They'll just look at the proofreading and make sure that everything is like grammatically correct or formatted correctly.
Punctuation, etc. Okay.
Yes.
Probably the better, like you just said, the better way is like if you have a mother or an English teacher.
If you know somebody, like if you know a friend or somebody who like maybe has experience with editing, or like an English teacher or anything like that, they're
Sure.
great resources. And most of the time, like, you know, it can be kind of a lot to ask somebody to read through your book, but I, in my experience, is if they're your friend or family member, they're usually happy to help you out in some way.
And they'll be most time it'll be constructive criticism,
Yes.
so yeah, it's not like you have an author with red marks all over it like the
Right.
old elementary
Right.
school.
Right. Exactly.
Well, Tabitha, I appreciate you coming on, but like I said, I want to definitely show your book again, and let's bring this up. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a good fantasy, like I said, get away from the world. Go to another time and another place. This is the place, the books you want to read. You can get them on Amazon, but I would recommend you go to the author's website, tmcole.com, and that way you can see all of her other work, other things that she's done, maybe working on. So I think there's a wealth of information that we could all benefit from. And actually, I'm looking forward to reading the first book myself. So I
Oh,
think we
thank
need
you.
more fantasy. We need more fantasy writers. Like I said, get us away from the problems of the real world. We
Right.
have too much network news bombarding us every day anyway. So
We want to see the good guys win too.
right, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, Tabitha, I appreciate you coming on the Van Buren Variety Show. We look forward to seeing more work from you, and we'd like you to come back and visit us again someday.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad you had me here. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great night.
You too. Thank you so much.
And, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it again for another episode of the Van Buren Variety Show. Just a reminder for our newcomers, I'm on here once a week with an individual guest to talk about their interesting profession or their hobby, or they might be doing a craft for us. And I even have some musical guests, and that's guest plural, coming up next month. So you definitely want to stay tuned to that. Make sure you like this video too. Let our guests know that you have enjoyed her feature and her expertise. And subscribe already to the show if you haven't already. So, again, this is Bob Van Buren for the Van Buren Variety Show. Certainly glad you're here, and I hope to see you again next week. Good night, everybody.